Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker's Sports Show, where we discuss anything and everything you want to know about sports. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the NFC South, and we are trying to get these out before the NFL season starts. It sounds kind of up in the air right now, whether or not it will actually start and start on time, but we'll cover that bridge when we get there. And let's welcome in to the podcast the co-host, Mark. How are you, Mark?
Doing well. Good to be back with you guys. And like Trevor said, covering NFC South this week. We've been over NFC West and East and kind of had our thoughts on that. And NFC South for me is, again, another division with a lot of questions, but we'll dive right into it here soon.
So let's just get started with, I guess, the Falcons. I mean, let's just jump into it. The Falcons have picked up Todd Gurley in the offseason to a one-year contract. I'm thinking that it may end up being more. I think they just wanted to get him in the door and kind of show them show Todd what they can give him. The problem is they went 7-9 last year, which I feel like is kind of not okay with who they have. I mean, they got Matt Ryan, they had running backs, which because of injuries kind of dampened stuff. But I feel like they just have a lot of really big-name players, and they just haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, and I know last year they had a lot of injuries, so there is a chance they could have a better record. But like you said, they picked up Todd Gurley. He's had arthritis in his knees. I think that's why they only have him on that one-year contract, kind of a prove-it deal. So it'll be interesting to watch and see what he can do. Matt Ryan, I think he's about 35. I looked up his age earlier today, and I think he's about 35, so you kind of question how much he has left in the tank. As far as defense, they have a couple guys you might recognize the names of: McKinley, Dante Fowler, Deion Jones, but there's no real game changers. And with some of the talent in this division, that's something that really concerns me, is that they don't have a solid defense. When looking up their kind of team stats, they're middle of the road to bottom third in a lot of like yards allowed, rushing and passing, and scoring. They're in the bottom half to bottom third. So the defense is a concern. And they do have a lot of good skill position guys. Todd Gurley, I think, is on track to start. But again, he's been injured a lot lately the past couple of years. They have their two big-time receivers, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. And I don't think there's any lack of talent on the offense, but just everybody staying healthy and everybody getting together is going to be big for them. And kind of from a fantasy standpoint, I think I've had both Jones and Ridley on my team at different points the past couple of years. And Julio will get you those yards, but he lacks in the touchdown category, which is weird to say about a big-time receiver. But if you have him on your fantasy team, you know how important getting those receiving touchdowns is. And he just doesn't seem like he has been getting the past couple of years. And then Calvin Ridley, when I had him, I think last year, it just seemed like 1 week he'd go off for 5 catches, 80-some yards, like 2 touchdowns. And the next week you wouldn't hear anything. So from a fantasy standpoint, this is a kind of a frustrating offense, but there is a chance they bounce back, but there's a lot of questions with them as well.
Yeah, and I would say that's pretty much their whole team in general. I feel like is that they're so up and down. They play very, very well against a really good team, and then next week they'll lose to a team that has like 2 wins. And I just don't get what's going on there. I don't know if they need a coaching change, if they need an owner change. I mean, the owner did build a brand new stadium and put Chick-fil-A in there, even though Chick-fil-A is not open on Sundays. So I don't know if their owner doesn't know what's going on, or I don't know what is wrong with the Falcons. They have a solid team, but they just every year it's like they just aren't good enough or aren't winning the games they need to win to make it to the playoffs and then make a run in the playoffs. And last year I kind of marked it up to the injuries because they did have a lot of injuries last year, but I feel like they just 7-9, they should have been way better than that. Injuries or not, and they just can't seem to get it done each season.
Yeah, after that Super Bowl year, it's just kind of been a roller coaster every season since. So I don't know if they need to have a reset or what's going on, but this might be the year where they have to make a decision on Matt Ryan, on some of these skill guys, and either decide to rebuild or push in more resources to get more talent around them.
And then behind them is the Carolina Panthers, which they went 5-11 last season. Obviously, I think they're better than 5-11, especially since they have if not the best, one of the best running backs in the game with Christian McCaffery. It seems like he just carried them, and they just, if he didn't carry them the whole way there, they weren't going to win.
Yeah, and he's, like you said, one of the most talented running backs in the league. Huge pickup in fantasy if you can get him. I never seem to have a high enough pick to get him, but he's one of the most talented, well-rounded players in the league. But again, questions here on quarterback. Cam Newton's not there anymore. He's with the Patriots, and they picked up Teddy Bridgewater, and I think he's in line to start still. But Teddy Bridgewater has suffered a lot of injuries, so I don't know if they are counting on him to be the guy all season and what they expect of him. Do they want him to just be a game manager and kind of not turn the ball over, get consistent numbers and do that, or are they expecting him to be a star? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I thought it was weird. I mean, I know there's problems with Cam in Carolina, and I know that's been a problem for a couple of years now. What I don't understand is if they knew it was coming, why didn't they go out and try to get their new franchise quarterback? Why would they bring in a maybe not even the best 20 quarterback in the league and Teddy Bridgewater in? So I don't know if they're trying to, I wouldn't say tank, but I don't think they're in the best. They don't look like they are a team that's ready to contend for anything. They look more of like a team that's trying to rebuild. And you kind of saw that them moving on from Cam. And then you got a few other players that aren't there anymore. Probably the most notable one is Luke Kuechly. He retired in January. They were able to go out and get a new head coach, but I just feel like the team as a whole isn't built to win this year, which again, I said it last week's episode about the running back position. Like, Christian McCaffrey is just basically losing his best running years ahead of him, and he's just not really getting anything for it. You know, his team hasn't really been great since he's been there, and he's pretty much the only star in that offense now.
Yeah, it's kind of a Saquon situation where we pointed that out in the NFC East podcast, where you're not sure how many good years these guys have left. Running backs have notoriously short careers, and you might be wasting Christian McCaffrey's prime years by not putting people around him to take the load off of him. And obviously he's good and can handle the load, but if he gets hurt, then your team basically drops off. And I know their new coach, Matt Rhule, is supposed to be some sort of offensive wizard. He has NFL coaching experience. He was an assistant offensive line coach for the Giants in 2012, and then has been a head coach in college since 2013. He had a couple years at Temple and a couple years at Baylor, and kind of picked Baylor back up off the mat after the scandal there. I just don't know if he has a lot besides Christian McCaffrey to really play with in that offense, and that concerns me. And then on the Luke Kuechly front, I mean, they had a defense that wasn't great anyway, and Luke Kuechly retired due to concussions, mostly health, and if he wants to do that, that's fine by me. I mean, if he wants to protect his health and he's got enough money to last him the rest of his life, that's fine by me. But I think they're going to be really struggling to find any defensive help at this point. And you're in a division where there's a lot of offensive weapons. We went over Falcons. They have Gurley, who could do something this year, and then their two receivers. Saints obviously have a lot of talent. New Orleans obviously has a lot of talent. So and Tampa Bay, I mean, obviously has a lot of talent. So definitely have a work to do on defense. And even if Christian McCaffrey had this record-breaking year and did everything he could, they may not have enough talent to stay in games.
Yeah, and kind of the more we talk about it, the more I talk myself into it. That last year they went 5-11, and they actually were an okay team. I would say a 5. They should have been closer to 500 than 5-11. So with them finishing 5-11 last year, I could see them completely tanking this year, maybe winning 2 games, and possibly trying to win that Trevor Lawrence deal at the number 1 pick. So Carolina's, not looking very strong, and some of its wins last year were against some teams that are a lot better this year, and we'll get to that later. But let's move on to the New Orleans Saints, who finished first in the division, 13-3 last year. What do you think about the Saints, and do you think they are still as good a team as they were last year?
I think they have a chance, but I have some questions about Drew Brees. He's been so good for so long, but his production has started to drop off. I mean, it's not maybe noticeable to fans who are kind of casual. Last year, 2019, he had 1,000 less passing yards than they did in 2018, 100 less attempts, but his touchdowns only dropped by 5, so he's still getting touchdown production and not throwing a ton of interceptions, but he's starting to decline, and I think his arm's starting to kind of decline. So we'll see if he can keep up orchestrating that offense. Obviously, they do have a lot of great skill position players. Alvin Kamara. Then they got Latavius Murray to be his backup. And then Michael Thomas, one of the best wide receivers in the league. Those 3 guys, if you're a fantasy head, could be people to watch. I've had Kamara for a couple different fantasy teams and usually does pretty well, that well-rounded running and passing game. If you're somebody who likes to handicap and get 2 running backs on the same team, Latavius Murray wouldn't be bad. And then, like I said, Michael Thomas is one of the probably top picks in fantasy for receiver. So they got skill position players. And one thing when I was researching that I was surprised, maybe I just don't pay enough attention to their defense, but New Orleans had a really good defense last year, better than I thought. They were 4th in the league last year in yards per game rushing allowed. They only allowed 91.3 yards rushing per game, and they're kind of just average anywhere else. They're not bad. They're not the best team in the league, but they're kind of average everywhere else in that defense. And with their offensive talent, an average defense might be enough to keep them in the hunt for the division, to be a division winner.
Yeah, and kind of what you said about Drew Brees, they've really gone more to the running game the last couple of years, since they have had some pretty good people like Kamara, Reggie Bush, Murray. They've had the people to be able to run the ball more than they were early on in Drew Brees' career, where they were basically just passing. I feel like as a whole it makes them as a better team, but I feel like they just haven't gotten. I honestly thought last year that the Saints and the Chiefs were going to meet in the Super Bowl, and I thought it was going to be a complete shootout, and I was excited. And then the 49ers show up there, but the Saints just, I don't know what happened to them last year. I mean, they went 13-3. They had a great season. So you told the stats about Drew Brees, and he is starting to decline, but I feel like their team as a rounded whole is getting better. You kind of brought up the defense as well. Their defense used to be just absolutely atrocious, and that's the reason Drew Brees had such great numbers, is he had to throw to keep them in games. Now he doesn't have to throw as much, but I do agree that he is dropping off a little bit. It seems like he's starting to kind of slow down a little bit. He doesn't do really the things he used to do. Now he's more, I wouldn't say he's a game manager, but he's really good at game managing, and I just don't think he has the ability to be like a top 5 quarterback anymore. I would say he's still going to be solid. He's still going to have good seasons for a couple of years, but he is starting to decline, which stinks because he's been good for so long. But I do think the Saints are getting better as a team as a whole, and I don't know if they can tie or beat the 13-3 record, but I definitely think they're going to be close to that record again this season.
And finally, we'll move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, probably the team people have been paying attention to the most this offseason. With Tom Brady moving on from the Patriots and going to the Buccaneers. They were 7-9 last year. In my opinion, this is probably the most weapons Tom Brady's ever had as far as a well-rounded skill position group. I mean, obviously he had Randy Moss in 2008, but this year he's got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Gronk came back out of retirement. I don't know what to expect from him, but if he's anything like he was before, that's a major weapon. O.J. Howard, who's been somewhat disappointing at tight end but has the talent. So he's got weapons, and he's turning into kind of the same thing Drew Brees is, where they may be more of a game manager. Tom Brady definitely has talent this year. On defense, this is another team where I was surprised how good their defense was. They have some household names: Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, Jason Pierre-Paul on the defensive line. Shaq Barrett and Levante David at linebackers, but they had a really bad passing defense last season. They were third worst in the NFL last season by yards per game. This may sound weird, but I think having Tom Brady could help their defense. Jameis was throwing all these pick sixes last year, and so they had to be in all these shootout games where they're trying to catch up. And I think if Tom Brady can kind of just play consistently and not turn the ball over, that could actually help his defense. And they may want to go out and get a big-name defensive back if that's possible. I mean, Jamal Adams already is on a new team, so that's somebody that people have talked about a lot as somebody who could be moved. But if they could find a defensive back who's upset in their situation or the team wants to get rid of him, that could maybe swing their record quite a bit, because they're solid on front seven on defense. They got talent on offense, but they need some defensive back help. And the rushing defense, I talked about passing defense, rushing defense, they were actually first in the league last year by yards per game. They only allowed 73.8 yards. So they definitely have talent. Just everything needs to come together and maybe plug in a couple pieces here and there. But you could see them make a big jump this year.
Yeah, and compared to last year, you're kind of right with Jameis Winston thing. With him throwing so many interceptions, the defense was on the field basically all the time. But I do remember their offense really struggling even with the weapons they had. And I don't know if it's because they had so many weapons that they just couldn't throw the ball around enough. But I do think Tom Brady coming in will kind of be able to spread that ball around, because Tom Brady doesn't really throw to one receiver. He throws it basically to whoever is open. And if they have that many good players on offense that he can throw to, then it's just going to make him that much more dangerous. You think about the New England teams where he didn't really have a great wide receiver. He had some really good wide receivers, but there was no like top-end wide receivers like an Evans or even a Godwin, or like Gronk was his best guy. And now you're not getting two Gronks with O.J. Howard, but you're getting a Gronk and a half Gronk. So he could do a lot with this team this year. And I've seen a lot of people ask the question, do you think the Tampa Bay Bucs can make it to a Super Bowl? Do you think Tom Brady will be able to win a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay? What do you think, Mark?
I don't think I have them going that far. I think they'll have improvement, but I don't know if I can see them going to the Super Bowl. I think the Saints have a better shot at making it this year still, but could be one of those things they build on some success this year and maybe next year they have a shot, but I don't see it happening this year.
Yeah, and I don't know what the contracts look like for the Bucs, but I know a lot of these guys are kind of on smaller contracts. Their years are coming up soon, so this might be a team that they only have 2 years together before kind of just disbanding and not being able to afford them. Or, like Tom Brady, he's only got a couple years left, I would think. Unfortunately, he's to the age now where an injury could basically be the rest of his career, and you always have to play those odds. I mean, you think of Gronk. I mean, one hit to Gronk, and he's done for the season. And then Tom Brady gets, hurts his thumb or something, and he's done for a couple weeks. So this team is kind of, they can be really, really good, but stuff can go south very, very quick with this team. And I would say they get a better record than their 7-9 last year, but I'm with you as far as the Saints go. The Saints are just way too good, all of around team. I mean, they have some spots where they could get better, but I feel like the Saints are just a better all around team than the Tampa Bay Bucs.
And to wrap up these division podcasts, these division preview podcasts, we've kind of been going through our order for finish this season, and it sounds like you have the Saints first, but how do you see this division playing out?
I see the Saints winning the division. I'm thinking another 13-3 season, maybe a 12-4 season. And then I actually have the Tampa Bay Bucs. I could see them winning 11 games. I mean, I could see them going 11-6 or something like that, or 11-5. I could also see the Falcons doing the same exact thing too, especially with Todd Gurley. If Gurley can stay healthy all season, then the Falcons have a chance at that 11-5 record too. And then I would say Carolina in fourth for sure. I'm seeing Carolina maybe win 2 games this season. Hopefully McCaffrey stays healthy the whole season. If he gets injured, they ain't winning nothing without McCaffrey. So I got the Saints in first. I got a throw up between the Bucs and the Falcons, and then I got Panthers in fourth. What do you got?
I agree with all that. I think it's the Saints division to lose, and probably keep picking them until they don't win it. They just have been so steady in that division and have all that talent and an average, at least average to above average defense. So Saints are going to be my division winner, and I agree that I think it's either going to be the Falcons or the Buccaneers probably fighting for a wild card spot. I think they both have the potential to be probably 10, 11 win teams. We'll kind of just see how it breaks for both these teams. I'd say, like you said, it's a toss-up. I'd say maybe the Buccaneers have a better chance. I think some of the Falcons players are starting to decline, so I think they're neck and neck, but the Buccaneers might be my number two if I had to pick one. Then the Falcons, and then, like you said, Carolina, there's Christian McCaffery and basically nobody else, so I agree with you. I can see them kind of bottoming out this year and maybe unintentionally entering the Trevor Lawrence or if they don't go that route, number one pick discussion.
Yeah, and so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Keep in mind, we still don't know 100% whether or not we will even play football. So keep that in mind when we're talking about this stuff. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what might happen, but we're going to play it just like it's a normal season, and we're going to try to give you the best information that we got with what we have, and try to make fun out of the season. And yeah, I got the Saints, and then again up in the air with the Falcons and the Bucs. The interesting thing about the Bucs is with Tom Brady going there, I was like, oh, he's got Evans, he's got Godwin, but I don't think they're gonna be that great. And then Gronk comes out of retirement, and they instantly, for me, go from a 10-6 team to a 12-3, 11-4 team. Like, they get a couple wins just based on the Gronk signing, because Gronk is an absolute madman. But we'll have to wait and see, because maybe he gets injured, or maybe he decides that no, my body can't handle this. I'm backing out. However they want to do that. And then again, we don't know. This is based on what we're recording on August 5th. Players could back out. Players could decide not to play anymore with COVID and everything. Players could get traded. It could be completely different teams by the time we get to the actual NFL season.
I think that'll probably wrap it up for our NFC South preview podcast. Next week, we'll finish up the NFC with the NFC North. Make sure you listen to our normal podcast on Thursdays and these NFL division preview episodes on Sundays. We thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you and appreciate all the love you guys are giving us. Please subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all the different podcast channels. We also have a YouTube channel that we've started up and are going to be putting more and more content on there. They can find by searching Slackers Sports Show. You can also follow our account on Twitter to get updates on us, sports stories we find interesting, different nuggets that we kind of want to get out to you guys by searching @Slackers Sports on Twitter.
Yeah, and so here's another week of the NFC. Next week we're going to finish it up, as Mark said, and then we'll be moving on to the AFC. So we're only a couple weeks away, 4 or 5 weeks, I guess, away from finishing this up, and hopefully in those couple of weeks we'll know more of what the NFL is going to look like and how everything's going to turn out. But again, thank you everyone for listening to the podcast, and we will see you next Thursday, and then another episode next Sunday.